When I was invited to talk again in this very exciting forum, I looked at what I'd been told to talk about: life, or rather love, life, fathers. And I really wondered what comes first. The father can create love. Love can create the father. The father can create life. But I thought to start with life. And I want you just to engage me. Please indulge me. Please stand. Just stand. Stand. Yeah. Sit. Stand one more time. Just one more time. Okay, sit. Gives me a sense of power. But the reason I'm asking you to stand is because many times we assume life. Many times we take it for granted. The fact that you can just stand at will and sit and stand and say, About 9 months ago, I was in a position to stand and sit and do virtually everything that we do on a daily basis. And then I went for a routine checkup, though I had been going for checkers and there were some markers that were not looking too good. And finally, after some checkup, the doctor says, "I'm sorry, Ken, you have cancer. Don't ask me which one." And so, as fate would have it, went through the paces, and within a week, had to be evacuated to the United Kingdom. Somehow it just gotten bad. And within another week or so, after tests or two, I found myself being wheeled into the theater. But what was very interesting was, somehow I just kept going. In fact, when they were putting on some funny stockings, which they take you with to the theater, I'm told to improve your circulation, I still had my laptop because I had to send mail. And the nurse is telling me, "You got to move." I'm saying, "Let me just send one more." And so I went through the surgery. And of course, when I came out of the surgery, you don't even feel any pain because you're given a small contraption of morphine. You know, morphine takes you high. And every time you feel a pain coming, you press the button. And I smile. But when I left hospital, I couldn't go with the morphine because it's a controlled drug. I have never felt pain like that in my life. I could barely move. I remember telling my wife, "Please move this leg." And because she's scared, she's asking me questions. How do I move it? And I'm telling her, "Just move the leg." And I think it was so trying for her. Then, in fact, later she would tell me that she would go to the kitchen and cry, then come back, not knowing what to do. It was so bad that because we were living in an apartment that had 3 floors, and the TV room was in the basement floor, and when I came from the hospital, I went to the basement floor, I just had to get to my room. I couldn't walk, and I had to go on my back one step at a time. One step, one floor, and again up. And she's watching me, and she's almost crying. Then, of course, I spent quite a number of months. In fact, I spent almost about 5 months there, recuperating, and she was always by my side. Like when I couldn't get out of bed, I would hold her neck, and she would lift me. She would cook for me. She would wash me. And I said, that's what love is. And at some point in time, I asked her, "Why do you do this?" And she told me, "You've also done a lot for me." She told me, "Do you remember for all the C-sections I've taken, because all our kids, with 3 kids have come through C-section, do you remember you've always been in the theater?" I said, "Oh, I see." But as fate would have it, I found myself reflecting. I mean, here I am, a high-octane fellow, be going here, doing there, talking everywhere, and all of a sudden, you cannot move. I found myself reflecting on what life was. I found myself appreciating that I couldn't stand and sit at will. And I kept telling myself that there's something God wants me to see. What is it that He wants me to see? I reflected on what I do. And at some point in time, of course, especially in the earlier periods, the kids would call me. And you don't want to tell your kids you have cancer. And since we had left them with my mother, I remember the first time they called, my mother asked me, "Do you really want to talk to them?" Because she could feel I was tired. I told her, "Mom, put them on the phone. I will talk to them like Kenyatta." The old one. And of course, when I got the phone, my voice boomed like Kenyatta's. And my kids never really got to understand what their father was going through. In fact, they started giving me shopping lists. Such are kids. And so, as I was coming back to Nairobi, or as I came back to Nairobi, there's some things that I committed myself to doing. In fact, I really reflected on my life, because life is about people, my immediate family. I questioned myself, how do I engage with my kids? I committed myself to be a more loving person to my kids, to my wife, to my friends. Sometimes we don't seem to make time for people. I committed myself to walking a lot more slower. In fact, these days you find me walking. Before that, I used to walk like this, going somewhere. These days I walk deliberately because I love life. All right? I play golf with my kids. Bought them small golf clubs. But before my surgery, I would pay a caddy and I would go off because I was not patient enough for them to keep hitting small balls. But after the surgery, I would tell them, "Hit, son, hit." And then there was this incident that also really put my faith, my newfound faith, to test. I have this big job, potentially a lot of money. We all need money. It was at the Great Rift, some conference that was happening, and I was doing some work there. I was to go to this conference, and my son was going to Tanzania. And I had made a point of taking my other son to Tanzania when they were going to Tanzania. So he comes and tells me, "Dad, I know you're coming." Conference, my son. Money, my son. And on reflection, I chose my son. I reasoned, these guys can get another consultant to do what I do. But my son cannot get another father. And so it was to be that they went with a school bus and we were to follow with my other son, who's now started 7. And what was very interesting was we were to have left in the morning, but because of some work that had to be done, it got to 4, we are not left. And my son was telling me, "Dad, we must go." I said, it's dark. He says, "No, Dad, we must go." So I thought about the surgery and I said, "We are going." And as I'm saying we are going, of course my wife is saying, "You guys can't do that." After I'd made my decision, I said, "We can do that." And you can imagine now driving with a 7-year-old boy from Nairobi to Arusha at 4. By the time we were getting through Athi River and Kitengela, it was already 8. I'm asking my son, "Do we go back?" He says, "No, Daddy, let's go." I said, "We are going." And so we drove. And we were talking about all sorts of things. Luckily, when we got to the border, I found some friends of mine who were also going to Arusha. They were in the bus, so we took them in the car. So at least we had more security. But what was very interesting is on that trip, because we joined my son in Arusha, when we were coming back, we were just 3 of us. It was the boys. So I had time to show them the radiator. Huh? And of course, between them, they are telling me, "Dad, I think this car can go faster. You go a bit faster." But what I think the cap of it all was when we were coming back, when we got to Athi River, the president was coming from, I think, Machakos or something. And at some point in time, I think one of his bike guys had an accident, and so the motorcade stopped. One of his details saw me there and says, "Njiru twende." So I said, "Oh." And by the way, as I was coming back from Tanzania, I was giving a talk somewhere, and as I was doing badly on time, but they still managed to convince me to stop at a place where there were quad bikes. And so we rode the quad bikes, and I'm looking at time. My wife is calling, "Where are you?" But what was very interesting was, when this guy told me twende, after the traffic was cleared, I stepped on it. And the small boy in me came out. I don't know whether it was a nice thing. Let me tell you, the car was doing 160, 170. My kids have never been happier. And when they got home, that was the first thing they told their mom, "Mommy, 160. And you know what they said to boot? "We know you couldn't have done that." What's my point? My point is, I think the role of fathers, as Wango was saying, is to throw children up. I've never seen a mother throwing, in fact, they close their eyes. Which means what you're doing is giving those kids the permission to basically take risks. I have a daughter. And even for her, I've become more deliberate. In fact, I've been telling myself, because she loves swimming, I've been telling myself, you must wake up and take her for swimming. And you must sit there and listen to her. And those are the only memories they'll ever take along. I remember, by the way, my late father, every December would take us to Mombasa. And because he was a politician, we literally had to grab him. But after some time, it became a culture. I remember, as he grew older and he couldn't drive himself, we took him where? To Mombasa. In fact, he used to ask me, "Are we going to Mombasa?" As my kids are asking me, "Are we going to Mombasa?" he's asking me, "Are we going?" That's what John Gumi is saying. Be gentle on we the fathers. As we are exiting, others are coming in. And I reflected on the phrase that the boy is the father of the man. Which means that if you don't take care of the boy, or even the girl who becomes the mother of the woman, then you'll have lost the plot. And so for me, what I would like to urge all of us, especially as fathers, is to understand that we must keep throwing our kids in the air. Quite well, when they are young, it's literally. But as they grow older, it's figuratively. And yes, we've come from a tradition where our fathers never hugged us. In fact, we're just talking again with Ngumi. My father came to school only once in Alliance. And even then, he told me I was just passing through. Because they were never meant to show these mushy things. I'm sure when he saw me hugging my sons, he'd almost go like, "Why?" But I think we are living in a different generation. And I think it is important for us as fathers to love our wives, to love our children, to love our friends, to love our nation. And by the way, I put it to you, fathers, that if we, in our collectivity, keep throwing up our children and holding them, by the way, don't drop them. Because if you drop them, it's gone. I can assure you, this nation will be a great nation. I keep saying the reason we're in the trouble we're in is because actually mainly of fathers. So once again, I really thank you for inviting me again to come and share with you some of my thoughts. The experiences we go through really shape us and give us points of reflection, and I have reflected. And I feel I know what God wants me to do. to continue doing what I do, but take it to another level. So when I call on you guys to be wangwana and to stop ushenzi, I hope you'll be in the space so that we can basically have love in this country, we can have life in this country, and we can have wangwana fathers. Thank you very much.